it was not the first time I kissed girls, but it was the first time I was in this space where it's like, we can all kiss girls and nobody's mad about it or, nobody's judging me about it.
So I know that what I'm about to say, I'm like setting it up. So I know that what I'm about to say is potentially really stupid and not much of a revelation, but it's still a revelation to me, and it's kind of been circling in my brain. So I just need to get it out. I just need to share it. Thank you in advance for your patience and your grace for sitting through this and listening to it. What am I trying to say? This week, when I was editing the conversation that you're about to listen to, it really struck me that although this show is for the most part about queer clubbing and nightlife, we don't really talk all that much about drugs or like drug taking or the impact of drug taking. Which isn't to say that this is a huge part of this week's conversation, because it's not. We only talk about it for a wee while. But the reason that it struck me is because drugs were really a key factor in helping this week's guest to connect with other people and, more importantly, to connect with herself, to like figure out and tune into who she really is. And who is this mystery guest that I am referring to? Well, it is Sinn Sage, adult film star and host of the Sage Advice podcast, where she interviews fellow performers about their experiences within the industry. We caught up to chat about the Masterdome, which was a club in San Bernardino, California. And along the way, we touched on everything from Sinn's experience of coming out whilst in high school, crushing big time on 90s film stars, and I can't wait until you find out who these film stars are, because there is nothing more 90s than these particular actors. And also, one of my favorite topics, rebelling against your small town conservative roots. Ooh, who doesn't love one of those stories? Before we dive in though, if you are not already subscribed to my newsletter, Queer Word, where my promise is to help you get a little bit queerer in under 5 minutes every week, then you are missing out. This week there is a bit of an overlap between the podcast and the newsletter, because the featured Queer Word in this week's issue is also something that Sinn and I talk about during this very episode. So be sure to sign up by Friday in order to find out what that is. You can find all the details on how to sign up and what the newsletter is about in the show notes for this episode. Right, that is enough from me. Why don't we get into it?
I very much wanted to get out of that. I felt like it was too small for me. It was too small, too conservative. But I will say that maybe partially due to that, I was very inspired to go against the grain.
Oh, going against the grain. So what does that look like?
For me, it was, I had this revelatory moment around 13. I'd been kind of questioning things for a while, but that was when I sort of realized that religion was bullshit. And then I realized that, like, the status quo was bullshit. And why am I trying so hard to sort of, like, fit in, whether it's fashion or whatever else, with this high school? So then I started dressing really goth. I'd get all my clothes at Hot Topic, and this was sort of like a previous era of Hot Topic. Like,
is this when Hot Topic was cool? Is that what you...
Thank you, yes. Oh, yes. This is when the clothes, there was like way more clothes, and they were all really goth. After my era, like after I graduated high school, the clothes at Hot Topic all started to be like pink and black. and more like, it was like a merging of like punk and goth kind of, but it was definitely trendy. And I was like, ugh, I hate that.
Never shopping there
So
again.
now it's like barely clothes. It's like Funko Pop dolls, just like 8,000 Funko Pop dolls and some Harry Potter memorabilia.
Okay, so this is not an ad for Hot Topic.
Definitely not.
What did it feel like growing up there then? Like, how did you move through high school and through society?
Yeah, again, I was just really, I want to say rebellious is sort of maybe the simple word. Just didn't want to fit in. Wanted the opposite of whatever fitting in meant. Didn't want to follow these sort of arbitrary rules, whether it was like real rules from the high school or more like societal, cultural sort of rules.
So I'm going to just scratch a little bit here. So sorry.
Okay.
I'm already going in on you.
Good, I love
You're
it.
telling me about how you responded. You're not telling me how you felt.
Yes. So how did I feel? I felt like I was bigger than this place. I felt misunderstood in this place, but not fully misunderstood because I had, artists like Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, and like they were really inspiring me to follow along that route that my heart was taking, I think. And maybe just like some frustration, like I can't wait to like leave this because I know that there's got to be like better places or maybe like not restrictive. So,
And did you have like a circle of friends, or were you just kind of out there banging your drum?
what's interesting is that I rolled with all the different types of crowds and cliques. Maybe we weren't best friends, but I was going to the parties with the popular people. I was hanging out in what we called the Bat Cave with the other goth kids. I was in choir all through school, so I would hang out with all the choir kids who were my friends also. I was in theaters, so, those were my friends. So even though, like, my aesthetic was super this goth thing, this exploration of myself through that kind of fashion, my heart, my personality, I was really just all around, all about. My parents were teachers too. Like I had my mom twice in high school. My mom is like the celebrity of this community because she had taught there for like 25 years. So, man, I would never go to the grocery store with her. I reached a point where I was like, nope, I'm not going to stop every 2 steps to have a 10-minute long conversation with someone from the town. Like, no. But I feel like through that, I also had this weird kind of acceptance also just because, everybody knew my mom and everybody had my mom as a teacher and everybody loved her. And so.
Oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
For me, it was good.
Okay.
It was a good thing. Yeah. It gave me I don't know. I feel like I had a pretty good reputation. And I did come out in high school. So this would have been, 1999. I had a girlfriend for a period of time, and like I came out to my best friend when I was like 13, I think 13 or 14. But, it was the 90s still, and it was very just like, I don't know. I was lucky that I was always really taught to be accepting of other people and accept myself and stuff like that. So I feel like I knew, but it took me a little bit to come out. Came out to my best friend. She was like, yeah, I knew. I was like, okay. But then it was like, do I want to, hold hands with my girlfriend at school and stuff? Like that was a huge deal because you got to think too, like my school maybe had like 2,000 people, like the entire school. It was a small place, and it was, not the world that we live in now to a certain extent. So that was something to consider. And I think what happened is we had planned on, when we went to homecoming, I was like, I'm not going to not dance with you. I'm not going to not hold your hand. Like, I'm done trying to like hide this. And that's it. When we go to homecoming, like we're just going to be us. And we did. And then we started holding hands on campus and, walking class to class and whatnot. And all I can say is I never experienced any backlash. Like, if people were talking shit, I didn't hear it. I know that some of my friends did, but they were my friends. And so they were just like really standing up for me. So I didn't have a terrible time with that, except that just, she like broke my little heart. But
But do you think that some of that might be because of your mum?
like some of the fact that I didn't face a lot of
Yeah.
outward discrimination. Yeah, I do kind of think that a little bit. Yeah. But the funny thing is even my mom was a little like, I think she was just afraid for me. She was just fearing for my safety. She was kind of like, I don't know if you shouldn't maybe be holding hands on campus. Like, and I was just, I remember being in the car.
There are too many threads in this conversation, and I need to pull them all back. So I want to find out, first of all, about inklings, and then we'll move on to this coming out to your mum and her response. And then I want to hear about your broken heart, okay?
Okay.
So we would go back to then the first inklings of you being like, oh, maybe I'm not heterosexual.
Oh, sure.
Do you remember what that felt like and when that happened?
Yeah. So in my memory, it is really around the time the movie Clueless came out. I feel like The Craft came out like right around that same time.
Classic.
And I remember just definitely feeling this attraction to Alicia Silverstone, but I think at the time maybe I wasn't putting in the pieces of like, oh, it's a sexual attraction, it's a physical,
I would have pegged you more for a Brittany Murphy type.
I think I appreciate her more now. Or we evolve and change over time. But it was definitely Alicia Silverstone, and just like the way her hair was and the way her like nails were. I don't know. I was just very, very attracted. And then so we're talking like around puberty, really, because I was like 11, 12, watching Clueless a lot. I do remember lying in bed and then thinking about Alicia Silverstone, not in the sense of like, wow, I want to be her, but in the sense of like wanting to kiss her, wanting to, like be with her, and using that as a fantasy to like touch myself with, and being like, what does this mean? And then it was the same thing with like Nancy from The Craft.
Oh, so which one is Nancy? Is that Fairuza Balk or?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, very much so. I hate the end of the movie where she loses, a spoiler alert for a 25-year-old movie, but every time I watch the movie, I'm like, God, why does it end like this? But see, with her, I do want to be her and I want to be with her, so it just gets confusing sometimes. But,
I mean, why choose?
Yeah, exactly. But so those were the first sort of inklings, and the more I thought about it, the more it just started to settle in, and then sort of reading I got really in, once I got the internet, very slow dial-up, okay, but I was finding these angsty teen poem places, and anytime there was written works about being queer in any way, I was really drawn to that stuff. It was really resonating with me, and I just reached a point where I was like, yeah, this is definitely true about me, and now what kind of thing.
But let's go back to the day after you got off to thoughts about Alicia Silverstone.
I don't know if I have all those memories still.
Well, okay, not the exact memories maybe, but the feeling. Was it a feeling of guilt the next day, or was it a feeling of like, oh yes, I've discovered something about myself? Or was it something completely different? Because why am I just giving you two options?
Definitely not guilt. I don't think guilt or shame was ever impressed upon me around sexuality. Mm-hmm. I was really lucky and blessed that even though I was allowed to explore sort of different religions, like when I was very young, like in elementary school, middle school, But that being said, it was nothing was ever like, I was never oppressed in a religious sense, and certainly not with sexuality. So it was more just like a slow understanding of that aspect of myself rather than like a revelatory moment. I think maybe like I didn't even have internalized shame around it, but it was more that I noticed about society and culture. Like, you can't just be who you are. You're either going to hide it or you're going to come out. And this is around the time that Ellen was coming out. And I know she's one of those people that's like, well, it's problematic, but I still do see what she did at that time in her career in life as really brave and really moving the movement forward. But it was like, okay, she came out. We had that Time magazine, like, this is a big deal. So I think it was more just that thing of, you're not supposed to come out about this stuff yet.
Yeah. So you're saying like you didn't feel shame necessarily, but there was also an awareness that you couldn't run through the streets and be like, hey, everyone, I love Alicia Silverstone.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, and then so you took to the internet, you explored many fan fiction. Well, I guess it wouldn't be fan fiction by that point, would it?
No, that wasn't fan fiction, but I also explored fan fiction. Oh, yeah. But I was a huge X-Files fan. So for me, to this day, I remain a huge X-Files fan. It's like 75% of my personality. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. But yes, I was definitely on these. Back in the day, they were called news groups, and you would just get emails from this group. And that introduced me to X-Files fan fiction, so I signed up for that.
And was it vanilla fan fiction, or was it like Scully getting down? Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, with the X-Files, at least where I was with it, it was all the whole wide variety. You'd get sort of, these are just stories people came up with in that universe, and then you'd get Scully. This series that I still remember was that Scully met a woman and they had this lesbian affair over the course of several stories, and I was really into that.
Do you still read fan fiction?
No.
It's this world that I've just never understood.
Yeah, I think it's like we love the media so much, and then maybe it's over, right?
Yeah.
Well, because it wasn't over when I was doing this, but it's limited in all these ways. So if we can also imagine this universe that we love with these characters that we love, but doing things that are unlimited, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a cool concept.
Well, yes, and I agree with you. But then when I sit to read some of it, I'm like,
because it's all manner of people. You don't have to have talent to be able to write fan fiction. So that's probably why I, got away from it. It's just
maybe I've just not met the right one yet. Maybe I just need to keep looking.
Yeah, and I was definitely drawn to the ones, they're labeled slash when it's gay. So either Mulder is with another male character, or Scully is with a lesbian, or with, a female character. Those would be slash fan fiction, and they'd have ratings. So, I'm obviously looking for the naughty ones, like...
Yeah, scroll until you get there. Oh, yeah, okay, here we go.
Yes. But, I mean, obviously that was part of my discovery process as well, right? Like that one Scully lesbian story that I still remember, like something was going on there for me, right? Like I was discovering those things about myself. There was even this place I found on the internet where it wasn't just X-Files fan fiction, it was celebrity fan fiction. So, there were stories about David Duchovny. And I remember writing a story about, meeting David Duchovny on a beach, and things happened. And
why wasn't Gillian Anderson involved?
I don't know why. I don't know. She was not the focus of my lust at that time.
Aww.
Now it's like, oh my God, she's a brilliant genius. She's an incredible actor. She's incredible. She's beautiful. She's aging like wine. I mean, I'm just Cannot say enough good things.
We might have gone off path. So so it wasn't this like revelatory Big Bang moment. It was this kind of slow recognition and unfurling of identity. Oh, I sound really poetic today.
Yes, but that is exactly the right way of saying it. Definitely that.
So you talked about holding hands at school and your mum not being totally au fait with that. What was the coming out process like with your family?
Gosh, I don't really feel like I had one.
Oh.
I had that moment with my best friend, and that really does feel like the closest sort of me saying to someone, I have something to tell you, and it's this. I don't really remember doing that in other situations. So the girl that I was with, she was my best friend. We just grew really close. I was so attracted to her, and not just like, oh, I'm physically attracted to this girl, I want to have sex with her. It was more just like I was so fascinated by her because when I wasn't quite in my fully goth stage, she was really in her fully goth stage. And so I was just so drawn to her for that, and for her just like not giving a fuck that she was by far the freak on the campus, and I was just like, this is really attractive, like this is really intriguing to me. So I got to know her more.
Well, was that another situation where you weren't sure if you wanted to be her or if you wanted to fuck her?
Yeah, probably like that. And then the more time we spent together, I was like, no, I want to like be with this person for sure. So I did emulate her like a lot. But then this moment happened finally where we were drinking and she had a boyfriend for a little while. He went off to college and I was like, okay then. And I remember it was over the summer and we got a little drunk and we started making out and I was just like, oh my God, like this is what I wanted for so long. And she was like, I think you're just the most beautiful girl in the world. And I was like, oh, what? So then I was like, we were sobering up the next day and all of this. And I was really just like, are we like together now? Like, are you my girlfriend? And she was really wishy-washy about it for a minute. And then she was like, okay, yes. And so there was like 3 months of that.
That doesn't sound like a good response. Like, oh, yeah, okay.
No, actually, here's what it was. Here's how it finally, I'm recalling this as right now. I was at school. She comes up, in the morning before school started, and she's like, Rachel, I have to tell you, like, I do want to be with you. I do. And I'm sorry I was being wishy-washy about it. And like, but I do love you. I love you. She said that. And I was just like, yes, because I love you too.
Aww. And then you broke up 2 weeks later, right?
It's hard to remember all this stuff. I feel like it was 3 months.
Oh, that's good for a teenage relationship.
Yeah, for high school, right?
Yeah.
Totally. But we never... I wanted to like make love to her. I wanted to be like, you and me, it's us, nobody's around, it's just us, and we have our moment. And even though we fooled around various different times, but I don't really feel like I ever got that moment.
No.
And she was always a little bit like, I don't know, she didn't feel like ready for it or what. But she also had like a very, very difficult home life. And at the time I just did, neither of us had the emotional maturity to understand what was going on with that. And
but so is she the one that got away?
No. I did feel that way a lot as the years went by, where I'd always crave sort of hearing from her again. And so, over the past 25 years or however long it's been, we've caught up every 5 to 7 years perhaps. And this most recent time she called me, I had really been wanting to hear from her. She found me, she called me, she asked me all these questions. It was really exciting. And then she started telling me stuff about her and I asked her some questions and it seems that she's fallen down the sort of Fox News rabbit hole of Trumpism. And then I was just like, oh, so I just don't ever want to hear from you again. That was hard for me. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's not focus on this. Let's talk.
Yeah. I'm still grateful for the experience. I would not be who I am today without her influence. And I'm very proud of the person that I am today. So I will never not be grateful for that experience.
Yes, just don't want
Yeah.
to mount her necessarily. But so you didn't
Nah.
quite answer the question about coming out. So you said that you didn't actually really come out.
Right. Yeah. So it was just really that, like, I came out to my best friend, and then, you know, I was with her, with this girl, my girlfriend, and we just went to the dance, and we just started holding hands, and then it was just, you know, like, I guess I'm out now because I'm just like
Ah, okay.
living this way in public.
Well, and,
Yeah.
and so that was the first time that your mum was aware that you were in a relationship with a girl.
So I think that with my mom, I had said some things to her like, well, how would you feel if, you know, what if I was, I don't know, a lesbian?
Totally hypothetical question here.
Yeah. I was just always affirmed to me, is always reinforced to me that I would be loved unconditionally, and I wouldn't be judged, and, you know, there'd be just no difference. And then I think when it was more like, okay, well, now here it's happening. Do you see it happening in front of you? I think it's a little bit different for a parent. And again, I don't think that her fear was ever rooted in any sort of like bigotry or discrimination at all. It was just that I lived in this small desert community town, and she didn't want me to get hurt. She didn't want me experiencing violence or anything like that.
Yeah, or ostracization. No, what ostracization? What's the word? Is that the word?
Yeah, that's the word. That's the word.
Well, and I get that, and I get that on a logical level that makes sense. But then, how did that feel when she was saying that to you?
Oh, yes. You know, so on the emotional level with which she was obviously approaching me, it felt bad. I was just really shocked, for one thing. I always had felt very encouraged, you know, definitely from my dad even more. My dad was more of like you just be you just be yourself, you just be a leader, you just be you know, it doesn't matter what other people think. And so to have my mom sort of confront me in this way of, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing this because you could get hurt and stuff. I was just so frustrated. Like, I don't remember if I said much, but I know there were like tears coming down my face, and they were just like tears of frustration, I feel like, because I was just like, this seems hypocritical, like, for you to say this to me right now.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I just felt that being myself was way more important, was the most important thing. Yeah, like more than any concept of safety or whatever. It's like, gotta be myself.
I feel like I've got a good sense of who you are and what drives you. So shall we head towards our lost space?
Yeah, so for me, okay, I remember the first time I saw a 2020 special on raves, and literally everything that they were reporting on, the way they were reporting it in this sense of like, this is dangerous stuff, and these kids are like having way too much fun. I was like, how do I get to one of those? Like, I need that. And luckily, so it was like the last half of my senior year. I was 17, but very much already feeling like an adult, behaving in a lot of ways like an adult. And I had some friends that were going down to the Masterdome on the weekends and going to these raves. And I was like, okay, when are we going together? Want to go. And so the weekend before the first time I went down to one, we had done ecstasy for the first time. Maybe 5 of my closest friends, and we're at my one friend's house, who he basically got the barn in the back of his house, and his mom, you know, he's just living like an adult again. And so we went to the barn, and we did the MDMA, and it was just such an incredible, eye-opening, intimate, loving experience. really revelatory in so many ways. And then the following week, and we went down to the Masterdome for the first time. And it was such a trip. You get there, you walk straight through the sort of like dance floory area to the back. And as you go out the back door, on either side of you, there'd be like 3 to 6 kids, and they would say E, L, or K. So you could get whatever you wanted. And I'm always sad that I never did the acid I was just always wanted that ecstasy at the time. So that's what I was doing. But now it was a similar experience, but instead of being with like my closest friends, it was with total strangers. But they wanted to ask me questions and they were listening to the answers and I wanted to hear about them. And they were telling me that I was beautiful. And it was not the first time I kissed girls, but it was the first time I was in this space where it's like, we can all kiss girls and nobody's mad about it or, nobody's judging me about it. It was just the first space where it was like this ultimate freedom to be yourself and no one was fucking with you and everyone was just accepting of you and wanted to hug you and show you these fun little tricks, these fun little like ecstasy tricks. Like, what about when I rub your head like this? Or what about when I put these lights in your face?
So is this a story about this space or is this a story about taking drugs?
Yes. But yeah, so for me, coming from this very limited little town where there was a lot of religious oppression. And as I was saying before, I was just finding like whatever ways I could to like basically say fuck you to that.
Yeah.
To like flip that off in the biggest ways I could think of. And then to come down to this little space that was like, for lack of a better word, like heaven. It was like paradise. I mean, it was like, how could it get any better than this?
So tell me about the anticipatory feelings. So you had seen this special on raves. You'd found out that raves were happening in this space. You had cornered the most appropriate people from your friend group who you thought would go with you. And you were like, we have to go. Do you remember the lead up, like that day before the first time you went?
Oh, gosh, I don't really remember that. That's so funny. Shit, what did I even wear that first time?
But it sounds to me like you weren't scared. It sounds to me like you were just like, yes, I have to be there. I have to go.
Yes, 100%, yes. It was just like, we're going to go down there and do this thing, finally. So I put on, my sluttiest little goth outfit with some fishnets. And
was it from Hot Topic?
Definitely, like most assuredly. It was from Hot Topic. And when I was first going to raves, I used to have these little fuzzy kitty ears. So I'd wear the kitty ears with like a visor. And I loved it. And I loved that this girl that I made out with, and she was like, God, you're so pretty. You are a cat. You're like a cat. And I was just like, yes, I am like a cat. Oh my gosh, it was so good.
Well, and so then going to the space, did it live up to your expectations?
Oh, exceeded my expectations. I think too, like I didn't know what to expect. Really, it was definitely different than what they showed on the 2020 that I had seen years before, because, well, all you see on those sorts of specials and stuff is sort of like from afar. The people dancing and like swinging their lights around and stuff like that. And that was definitely all there. But the funny thing is I didn't really spend a lot of time inside listening to the music. I was outside just in the space where we could talk. We could talk to the people and roll around on the ground and just like feel good. I don't know. I would go there and spend almost the entire time outside.
Well, and so when you say rolling around on the ground, do you mean like making out with people or just actually rolling around on the ground?
I think like people would bring blankets and stuff and you just get See, the thing is at least at that time, or maybe just in my life or through my lens, I don't know, but there was just nothing predatory sexual about it. It was almost like, whoa, look how good it feels when we kiss. Let's kiss more. It wasn't just like, oh, I want to fuck you and get my dick in there. It was just like, whoa, this feels so good to kiss. And even in later stages in my life, like for me, I was never felt super sexual with ecstasy. I felt really sensual. Like just every feeling is the revelation. And almost the times that I've like had sex while I've been on E has been a little like, almost like surreal, like intense in this way that's almost too much. And I'm like, could we just go back to cuddling and like rubbing each other and making out
Stroking
and
my
talking?
face.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Like that is the feeling that I always wanted and enjoyed. And definitely like my times at the Masterdome, it was like more of that sort of thing.
Well, and your preference was having deep and meaningfuls outside of the space. Do you remember the most intense deep and meaningful you had?
Oh, shit. Well, when you say that, the first memory that comes to my mind is, so my best friend and I it would almost always be us two. I'm sure I went to maybe one without him, but like it was almost always at least us two. And then the other friends would maybe come and go who could come that weekend. But so there was one time that we went there and, we would just, this was the early days that we would just get our drugs there and we didn't have, a testing kit or any of that stuff. So maybe we were engaging in risky behavior, but we got pills and I remember I was sitting there and I was like, I'm still not feeling mine and I don't understand why. I turned and looked behind me, my friend he's like 6 foot, maybe 6'1". His head just rolled back in a circle and he fell like straight back. Like passed out, but fell down like a tree and hit the back of his head. That was like, it was just really a terrifying moment. And of course, with the drugs, did not make it any less terrifying.
So what happened? Did he?
Yeah, so a bunch of people just immediately went crowded around him. I was right there. People were saying things like, turn his head to the side and stuff. So I put my hand under his head and there was some blood. So that was scary. Turned his head to the side, and I'm just like, rub it. I'm like, wake up. Are you okay? Like, hey. People were like, here, I've got a little pillow. It was like a little vibrating pillow they had brought because it was a fun thing to play with. But it was like, thank you. I'm going to put this under his head. Like, everyone just came in and was like, how can we help? And that was really cool. But it was terrifying. And then he, all of a sudden, he just like opened his eyes and sat straight up and looked around like he had no fucking clue what was going on. Someone had gone and gotten the proprietor of this place, I guess. And I was like, shouldn't we go? Like, we should go to the hospital. And he's like, come back here. So he took us into this like back room, gave us water. And he's like, if you guys want to go to the hospital, you can do that. But the cops are going to come. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to say, where were you? What did you take? Where did you get it? He's like, if you guys just drink the water and you chill and you relax, you're going to be fine. That is what happened. We chilled. We relaxed. We got hydrated. He was asking questions all night. He was like, why are you, like, I remember at one point, because I was feeling kind of like upset. I think I was upset. He's like, why are you upset? And I was like, you fucking fell and hit your head and it was scary. And he's like, what? Like he didn't remember.
Oh.
So yeah, that was, but then we tried to take him to the hospital the next day and he's like, I don't have health insurance, so I'm not going. And that freaked us out. And he went to work.
Oh, gosh.
Like, he didn't sleep and he went to work. He went to the pizza place and made pizzas. And it wasn't until he got back from work that night that he was normal again. Yeah. So that was definitely the most sort of serious moment that ever happened. Did it change anything about what I was doing? No, but like, at least I lived to tell the tale, I guess. I don't know, but it was scary.
Oh, and it's not really deep and meaningful. I was expecting someone to like spill their heart,
I
not
know,
their
right?
brain fluids.
Right, exactly. But a lot of like deep and meaningful things did happen, and it was more about sort of the friendships, which, they're not still around in my life, but they were there for a time. And I spent time with some of these people, outside of raves. And sometimes it wasn't even like conversations, it was feelings. I remember this one time after a rave, it was just a whole bunch of us that had sort of met and been hanging out at the rave. And we got in the car with this guy. We went down to where he lived, and then we took some more drugs. And then there was this moment where it was like all of us strangers, but we put our arms around each other on the bed, and I was like, we put our heads down, and it was this crazy, insane, like, connection. Like, we were all breathing together, and we were all existing together, and it was kind of like this concept of, like, non-duality, of, like, oneness, this concept of, like, that we aren't a bunch of individual people, we are all just individual expressions of a single force. I was really feeling that in that moment. And the crazy thing too is that, like, we were all like sunk into that place. And then at the same time, we all went and like sat up, and we were all just like, what the fuck, And I couldn't even tell you the name of any of those people, but I think there's just like more learning about that sort of existential level of connection and just love, obviously, like feeling love on that deeper level, like this level where there's like no restrictions to it. There's no like, you don't have to be any particular way to love and feel loved.
There's something that's especially magic. Maybe magic's not the right word, but there's something that's especially special about connecting with a stranger in a club. Like, there's just something about it. Like, when you sit down next to someone and you have this, like, deep and meaningful, or you have this connection, or you just kind of sit and talk, and you're able to say things that you wouldn't be able to say if it's someone that you knew.
Yes.
And you're able to pick up on things that you wouldn't pick up on with someone who you're overly familiar with. And I don't know where I'm going with that thought necessarily.
Well, I do think it's magic, just because I don't think we've got words. We don't have all the right words. So the closest I think is like magic. It's funny because I would sit here, I'd be like, I don't believe in God. Like, I think that's just utter nonsense. But I kind of do believe in magic.
But magic is like too broad a word for me, I think. Like, because there's so much that can fit in the bucket of magic.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe it should.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I just need to start believing it. Magic.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I don't like that when there's like a catch-all way of just describing away something.
Oh, I mean, I don't want to describe it away. I want to describe it in. Like, because there's no other way to talk about those nights at the Masterdome for sure than magic. Like, those were the magical nights from my youth. You know what I mean? Like, those were the spaces that was just like, otherworldly. Like, it felt like we could actually not have to be in the midst of all this suffering all the time. I don't know. I don't want to go off too much and sound too like...
No. Lean into the airy-fairy.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would just be like, well, that's drugs. You felt that way because drugs. It's not real. But, drugs are real, and they make real things happen inside of our real brains that affect our real consciousness and can show us the possibility of better ways of being in this reality, in the suffering. And that's what I think is really important and really magical.
So with all that in mind, you might have already answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just to see if I get a different response or something else triggered within you. What do you think that Masterdome taught you about yourself?
Oh, well, it definitely taught me that I am worthy of being loved and that I have like value as a person. Because for sure before that, I was really struggling with that stuff. I had clinical depression in my adolescence. I was on a little bit of Paxil for a short period of time, and I don't think it's very uncommon. I think a lot of adolescents struggle with depression as we are like becoming of the world in a really real way and sort of have to accept the world that we've got to live in. I was for sure struggling with that. And then a lot of that I think just got didn't love myself. In fact, in a lot of times I would just be like, I hated myself. I didn't think people wanted to hear anything I had to say. And then I had my friend night with the ecstasy for the first time, and it was like, oh. And then when I went to the rave, and it was like all these strangers, and yes, there was drugs, but it showed me through that like, why not? Like, why would I not be worthy of love when I love all these other people and they're loved? And like, why not me? And not only why not me, but like, I deserve that. I am worthy of being loved. And yeah.
Was it like a light switch flicking on, or was it more gradual than that?
This particular case, I think it was more like a light switch. It was like a revelation, yeah.
And have you maintained that?
Yeah, I have never felt as depressed as I felt in high school, like since doing the MDMA and having these experiences like at the Masterdome, yeah. The closest I got probably was either 2020 or this year, so probably like June-ish, July-ish. It felt very dark and very scary and doomed and hopeless. And then I realized, oh, well, I just get to feel like this every 4 years now because that's how American politics are. So I just had to find something to get me out of that. And I think it was the cartoon Bluey. I started watching Bluey and I was just like, listen, here's what I have control over, here's what I cannot control, and therefore I have to sort of let go, like do what I have control over and like let go of the rest. So I was able to come out of it, but it was really dark.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, but you know what I mean? That wasn't like internalized. That wasn't like, oh, I'm not worthy of love. It was just like, wow, my career might be criminalized and I might be put in some camps to exterminate queer people in the near future. More like that kind of depression.
Yeah, there's not much I can say in response to that.
I know.
Terrifying
It's
times.
so scary. Yeah, but yeah, so when I feel myself feeling that way again, I will just like pop on some episodes of Bluey and remember that there's still a lot of beautiful things about this world and this existence.
Including an Australian sheepdog.
Yeah. It's a blue healer, actually.
Oh, is she a blue healer? Yeah, sorry. That's why she got her name. Yeah.
That's right. But at least you know she's the girl.
Yeah, I've never actually watched it before. Need to maybe do that.
There are some episodes that are just pure joy, and they're so short. They're only like 7 minutes, but some of them are just really profound. And
would recommend.
Yes, 10 out of 10.
But then, so thinking about that younger version of yourself, and maybe the one before she ever took drugs, not the one that was showing up at Masterdome on that first night, but an earlier version a few weeks beforehand. If you had an opportunity to give her some advice first of all, would you? And second of all, what would you say?
Ooh, one of those questions. The thing is that if I would give her advice and I would change anything about who I am today, then I wouldn't do it. But the funny thing is that I very, very much remember this journal entry I made around that time before the ecstasy, where I was like, I think I was probably crying and I was very depressed. And I wrote in my journal, like, I just wish that there was an older version of me that could hold me right now and tell me that everything was going to be okay. And, where I'm at now is like, everything is going to be okay. So at least for that girl. And therefore, maybe I would go back and just tell her, like, don't worry, because everything is going to be okay.
Okay, that is us for another week. If you loved this chat as much as I loved this chat, then why not go and give some love to Sinn on socials? Sinn on socials. Oh, I love some alliteration. I will share all of the links in the show notes to this episode, so all you need to do is bring it up and scroll through. But just very quickly, she can be found on OnlyFans and on Twitter, and her profile name on both is Sinn Sage, and that's Sinn, S-I-N-N, and Sage like the herb. And also, a quick reminder that she has her own podcast, Sage Advice, which can be found wherever you stream podcasts. If you want to find out more about Lost Spaces, then you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Lost Spaces Pod. Right. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for spending the last hour with us, and I will see you here next Wednesday.